I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. I'm here with Ian Burns, our managing editor, calling in from Ottawa, Ontario, the nation's capital. We're live on TikTok and live on X, and I think we're live on YouTube. Yeah, ready to get going, Ian?
I'm definitely ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. So, no evidence of traitors in Parliament.
Yeah, pretty exhaustive inquiry. I mean, it was like 15 months, interviewed more than 100 witnesses, lots and lots of work. I'm sure it was extravagantly expensive as well, as these things usually are. But she found that there's lots of trouble out there, that the foreign countries are trying. They're in there. There's evidence that they're doing it. Um, They're trying to meddle. They're trying to meddle with diaspora groups, as she refers to them, which is just, like immigrant groups, primarily sort of the Chinese and Indian diasporas. We're led to believe, though she doesn't actually say that. And yeah, I mean, it comes on the back of that report from MPs and senators who said that there were witting members of parliament and senators who had, they cooperated wittingly with foreign agents to act against Canada. So in other words, they were traitors. That's what we were told by that committee last year. So she's kind of contradicted that, which is quite interesting. It will be interesting to see where it goes from here.
Does it say in the report where a lot of this is coming from, which countries that some of that interference or potential interference is trying to come from?
I mean, I've only read the executive summary and another summary that they put out because I mean, I don't know if there's anybody in Canada actually going to read all this report. It would probably take you about 7 months or something just to read it. It's like hundreds and hundreds of pages. Oh, it's like 7 volumes or something like that.
Wow.
But no, I didn't. In the executive summary, there is no mention, but it doesn't require it doesn't. You don't have to be like plugged into the Canadian intelligence services to know that it's China and India. Basically, they're the main two.
Um, yeah, so people can go read that story. And if you really need to fall asleep, you can probably go read that full report.
Yeah, well, you paid for it, millions of dollars, I'm sure. So you might as well get your money's worth.
Federal government planning tariff relief for Canadian businesses depending on the scope of the Trump tariffs. I mean, that calls into question a few things. Like, if they subsidize businesses, wouldn't that even, I don't know what's in the USMCA, but there's always been, like, when you subsidize a business, like our softwood lumber's been dealing with that, wouldn't that just accelerate some of these tariffs? Have they thought that through?
Yeah, what you mean because it would violate the deal?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the argument from the not just the Liberals, but every party, the argument is that the Americans, if they impose this tariff, will be violating that deal. And I mean,
Mhm.
that seems pretty clear to me. So it's the Americans that would have discarded the deal rather than the Canadians in that scenario.
Shouldn't we start with just like taking that deal to court and saying, "Hey, we already have a deal on the table. You gotta renegotiate that deal before you start like throwing tariffs and stuff around."
Yeah, I mean that could be an option, but I mean, there is like an arbitrator, isn't there? There's some kind of tribunal system in that deal that exists. It's like built into the deal, but realistically. Yeah, you hear a lot of people talk about things like international law and stuff like that. That doesn't exist. That's not a real thing. That's a figment of our imaginations. And if a country, particularly the United States, most powerful country in the history of the world, if they don't like international law and international deal and they renege on it, there's nothing, absolutely nothing that can be done in any court anywhere in the world, really, except maybe America. But I don't know how we would be able to take the case to the United States. It would probably have to be done by an American in America. So I don't know. It's like they've really got us in a corner, and this is what the Trump presidency's been about so far. It's like we're not gonna go along with all this guff from the previous like 50, 60 years of like the idea of the liberal international order. We just don't care anymore. We're the big boy. We're rich. We're powerful. We're just gonna do what we want. So I don't think a tribunal would help us there.
Yeah, Brian Lilly put out a tweet there saying, like he said that the election or the election of the leader is going to happen in the next couple of days here. He said that thing is just rife for a bot farm to kind of take over.
People have said that from the beginning, actually, and that's when they changed their rules ever so slightly, didn't they? Because now you're supposed to be a permanent resident. Before you didn't have to be. You didn't even have
Yeah.
to be a permanent resident to decide who the next Prime Minister of Canada is. But they changed a few bits and bobs, and then one of their PR people came out and said, "Don't worry about all these people who are signing up as like Chairman Mao and stuff like that. We're obviously going to find that. We're not like they're not going to go through." But I don't know, given how easy it is to register, there doesn't really seem to be any kind of vetting. So it's going to be hard, yeah. Especially when you think you can actually, like you say, you can get bots to do that. You can get a machine to do that. So
I w- yeah.
I don't know how they're gonna like filter through all of these
And
applications.
we do see a lot of bots on X already too, and then these bots kind of take over, and they kind of like someone puts out a tweet, and then all these bots jump on it and make it seem like everybody's on that side, right? And that's been out there forever, and they have been trying to clean bots out of X and different programs like that, but I mean they're all over the place, right?
Well, that was according to Elon Musk anyway. That was his primary motivation for the subscription thing,
Yeah.
wasn't it? To try and like filter out all the bots. But yeah, actually, now that you said that, you triggered my memory of that report earlier on, the foreign interference report. She actually said all that about like no trade, no evidence of traders, blah blah blah. But she said um, the most dangerous aspect, or the most dangerous threat to Canadian democracy is disinformation campaigns, which often are run by bots. And what she's talking about there is like she mentions an example of I think she mentions it in the executive summary. But anyway, an example of that is when Trudeau came out and accused India of having been involved somehow in the assassination of that chap in that Sikh separatist in BC. And then all kinds of bots. And I mean, I even noticed this just in my own sort of day-to-day life. You start to see a huge assaults on Trudeau and attacks on the Liberal Party, and that's increasingly just something that exists out there on the internet, and it's just like it's become very common now.
Liberal leadership candidate Chrystia Freeland argues Canada can turn the tables on the U.S. President Donald Trump and avoid massive tariffs on Canadian goods. And she's pitching aggressive trade retaliation.
Yeah, $200 billion worth, she says, and she wants to. She released a very unfortunate, or like her. Let's be generous to her and say that it was her media team rather than her. But they released a very unfortunate press release, which includes these two sentences. Trump is using uncertainty to unsettle Canadians. We
Mm.
must do the same. That last bit
Well,
being the most
they have
important.
they
We
have
must do the same. I don't think they
we
realize grammatically what that says. She's saying that
yeah.
she wants to unsettle Canadians as well,
Well,
which is
they've
what
done a
she's
good
doing.
job. They've done a good job of uncertainty, right? Because right now, here's the thing: we can't respond with clarity to any of Trump's threats because Chrystia Freeland saying one thing, Ruby Dalla saying one thing, Pierre Poilievre saying one thing, Danielle Smith one thing, Scott Moe. I mean, there's a ton of voices out of Canada, and none of that is with authority because we don't have a leader really.
But we also, I mean, because of the just how like interlinked the US and Canadian economies are, it's really hard to threaten anything that won't also harm us.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
really, really tricky one, which, like the only thing to say to that really is to emphasize once again how stupid this is and that it's being done by Donald Trump. He's the primary agent here, not our
Hmm.
feeble political class that doesn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Speaking of Ruby Dalla, as Prime Minister, she says this is unusual for a liberal to say, I will deport illegal immigrants and clamp down on human traffickers. So she is a recognized liberal leader, whereas, like they did boot out Chandra Arya. They said that he was manifestly unsuitable as a candidate, which is, like people are still trying to figure out what that means. If he's okay to be an MP, but not okay to be the leader of the MPs. It's just because all the MPs have equal rights, other than one's a leader, right? Isn't that correct? Like there is no
Well,
presidential powers that like Justin Trudeau holds. I mean, he's an MP just like the rest of them. He just happens to be the leader of his caucus.
yeah, and obviously because his party is the largest in Parliament, he therefore
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of like the prime mover of Parliament. Parliament is like in the American system, it's the president, it's the person of the president. He is the power, he is the force in many
Yeah.
ways. Whereas in Canada, it's the Commons really. So it's
Yeah.
whatever the Commons votes on, that is almost like the president. That's like all
Yeah, there's
powerful.
no
Yeah.
like I'm saying there's no three houses. There's not like the president of the United States has some powers reserved for him, like vetoing bills and different things. There is none of that in Canada. He is the leader of the party, which is the power they give him. But that's the curious part. If he's manifestly unfit to serve as leader, how is he fit to serve as an MP?
Indeed. And also, I mean, a lot of people have made the comment that he's been kind of unfairly targeted because of his ethnicity and his language and things like that, and his nationality, because he's born Indian. A lot of people are making that claim, and it's just classic with the Liberals, really. I say this a lot, but it isn't really just the Liberals. It's all left-wing parties, isn't it? Their rhetoric around diversity being the greatest thing ever, and we love all the races and all the sexualities, and we love women, and so on and so on. We're big feminists. That rhetoric never ever really aligns with their actions and how they actually behave. Because if they really did believe in all of this, they'd almost be like setting off fireworks and being like joyous. It's like, look at this guy. I mean, he was born in India
Yeah.
and he's come to Canada and now he wants to be a leader. Like, definitely, let's give him a boost because that's our philosophy. But it never seems to apply within the actual party.
Yeah, and the one that continues to puzzle me is we have Justin Trudeau when he came out and then did his lambasting of the American public, where saying that they failed again. They had the chance to elect a female uh, president, and again, once again, they failed. And then he's a proud feminist, and women will always find a friend in him. And here we have some female candidates, and instead, his team, even Gerald Butts now and his wife are now, firmly entrenched in supporting Mark Carney. The basically, some people would say that the old guard, the man of power or whatever, definitely doesn't fit any ethnic. Although he does have a few passports there. I'm not sure which he identifies as. He says a European.
Yeah. But no, it's true though. I mean, and also like a lot of his scandals or a lot of the kind of like shadows that follow him around involve women, don't they? Like one of the first ones was Jodie Wilson-Raybould, and then also like when he elbowed, no, he would deny that. When his elbow
Mhm.
made contact with a female MP's body in some way, that was a bit of a controversy. But I mean, even it's funny that I mean, it's not even funny, is it? It's just like astonishing that he said that about the Americans not being ready to elect a woman because not, it's just obviously it's like transparently stupid thing to say, isn't it? I mean, almost everybody can recognize how dumb that is right off the bat. But it's also a little bit awkward because obviously when he was elected the leader of the Liberals, he beat two women, didn't he? The two sort of main opponents to him were women, one of whom was his late father's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, but I mean, here, like I say, like here's his chance to support Chrystia Freeland, who was his deputy prime minister, who he said was good enough for that job for a long time, and also finance minister. But she was second in charge; she was deputy PM, and clearly not good enough to serve as PM, according to him and the people around him. All of the cabinet ministers that are like a lot of his cabinet ministers are supporting Mark Carney. It's almost like a love in there.
Indeed, yeah. Well, some have said that it represents a kind of coronation.
Hmm. This out of Alberta, Daniel Smith. Alberta doctors criticize provincial COVID-19 report as harmful anti-science. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one take on that news story. I mean they've led with the opposition to it, but the report itself is also quite interesting. which makes all kinds of recommendations. I mean, I think the most interesting recommendation in the whole thing is they say like it wasn't really that good of an idea to lock down society to try and keep cases down because it didn't really work, didn't really have an effect. So that to me is the most interesting because if we have another one of these pandemics, that's what I think people are going to be most concerned about. Like, are we going to lose our liberty again while the people in charge quite evidently don't really know what they're doing, don't really have any evidence one way or the other, don't really know what they're doing, but they just lock down society out of panic.
And I think the other
So,
big one out of there is no vaccines for healthy kids.
yep, and also vaccines make sure that people are sort of told about all the possible side effects. That's made abundantly clear before they're given the vaccines. But yeah, the kids one, that confused a lot of people, didn't it? Because right from the beginning, when they first began to study COVID-19, like serious people, like scientists and whatnot, they said, that was the great like positive, wasn't it? It's like, thank God it doesn't affect kids. It doesn't really hurt kids. And then strangely, they had this pediatric vaccine that everybody was being told was crucial for children to have. I mean,
Yeah.
there are
And
lots of
I should
contradictions like that.
I want to make sure I say that it was the no COVID vaccine for healthy kids, not the other vaccines.
Yeah, indeed, we're talking about COVID. Yeah, don't don't miss out on your polio vaccines, kids.
BC firm seeks injunction stopping capital gains hike proposed by Liberals. I mean, the CRA is administering this like it's passed, and yet it isn't. And then we even have leaders like Chrystia Freeland who says she'll scrap it. And so, like, why is it still going forward? And why is there now a lawsuit? Because now that's going to cost money, like, for the lawsuit for everybody, and yet it's, still going on, right? It seems odd.
Very, very strange, and I haven't really seen an adequate explanation for why this has happened either. I mean, it's the whole point of this system is that everything major really that happens has to go through Parliament first. That's the whole point. That's everything.
Mhm.
That's like that defines life in this country, and yet this one hasn't gone through Parliament yet.
And there you go. Google Maps already following Donald Trump's request, and the Gulf of Mexico is now called the Gulf of America.
Just for American users, though, it's not going to be for
Yeah.
us. But I think actually for us, they're going to give us both names because I think that's what Google they say something about that how when there's a dispute of some kind that they include both names. So for example, they include the Argentinian name for the Falkland Islands if you look at that, and they do think like quite controversial disputes about the names of places. So I think they're going to add it probably for Canadians as well, just alongside Gulf of Mexico.
There you go. Good thing none of our Great Lakes carry any names that are tied to, a different country. Like there's no Canada Great Lake that's, half
Well,
shared.
Lake Ontario, maybe they're going to
Oh,
come
there you
after
go.
that.
Well, there you go. So there you go. I think we should be quiet because they might just change that now.
And we'll have to respond and say that we veto Lake Michigan. We want that to change. We want it to be called something else. Lake Manitoba.
There you go. Dan Elbus put out a tweet on X there, and saying this is why Trudeau prorogued government so highly paid cabinet ministers can help their successor with his political needs. And this is what a lot of people are saying that it is, like a lot of commentary out there is that the Liberals are being selfish, even to the point as there's a story out there saying that they're trying to bribe the NDP with more spending if the NDP will allow this government to stand until October.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it it's astonishing that it's happened and that it still is happening. I think that of all the times to prorogue Parliament, suspend democracy in Canada, and spend a few months navel gazing as a party. It's the worst timing possible, really. The only thing that could have been worse is if we were in a shooting war, like we were actually sending soldiers overseas to try and kill other people, other soldiers. That's the only thing that would have been even more insane
Well,
than this, I think.
yeah. Well, I mean, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is where the rhetoric may hurt us, is because Melanie Jolie steps up to the podium and says we're going to do this to the Americans. Chrystia Freeland says we're going to do this. Mark Carney says this. I'm not sure what Rubio said. She doesn't get a lot of airtime. And then obviously we have Danielle Smith that's trying to be more negotiating, and then Doug Ford has said some stuff. David Evy's come out and said don't spend any money on the United States and don't go to the United States at all. All of these things are kind of giving just a bunch of noise, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not how it doesn't help with a sense of stability, does it? It doesn't make it feel like things are in order.
And then Senator Denise Batters has put out there too, is that she wants an election because Ottawa is planning pandemic level relief for workers, businesses if Trump imposes tariffs. Again, this is how we got our economy to where it is with all this reckless spending, and they're proposing this more reckless spending. Do they not see the fruits of their actions already?
Yeah, well, I mean, they would say we didn't ask for the pandemic and we didn't ask for this tariff threat, so they would try and remove themselves from any responsibility. But it is certainly true that, the COVID-19 fiasco having occurred, they should maybe think twice about doing something similar. Yeah.
We have a little clip we can play here from Dan McTeague, who was a Liberal MP in the past. He was a cabinet minister as well, right? And then the Chrétien government.
Mark Carney is very unapologetic. The very fact that he has Gerald Butts and Katie Telford and the same group of Liberals behind Justin Trudeau behind him, that should be an alarm, as well as his wife. And I don't like to bring in, our backgrounds, but his wife is part of the Eurasia group, part of the most militant of climate, catastrophists out there. Diane Fox, I should say, Carney. There's no doubt in my mind these people are committed to their green agenda, which it does not include human beings in terms of their ability to make ends meet unless they're prepared to accept a significant decline in their standard of living according to what they think. This is another form of authoritarianism on a level that Canadians are unfamiliar with. And if democracy doesn't matter with them, as it appears to be the case in the Liberal Party today, we have a parliament that hasn't functioned since September. By order of the Speaker, the Liberals have refused to divulge information about their green slush fund. That's money that you and I, our children, our grandchildren will have to pay for years to come, that have been divested to make these green grifters very, very rich.
There you go, Dan McTeague.
Yeah, an interesting dude who has very much turned on his old party, hasn't he? He also, back in 2013, he was one of the main supporters of Justin Trudeau. He helped him become the leader of the Liberal Party back then. So it's not like this guy's always been a partisan. He's very much changed his mind on things.
The food professor came out and said that, and this is an X tweet as well, the percentage of food products that are entirely Canadian, where every aspect, ingredients, manufacturing, packaging, distribution, and retail is sourced or performed within Canada is very low. It might be less than 10% of all food products sold in Canadian stores. It's, when they're asking for people not to buy American products, there's not a lot left.
Well, again, though, that's kind of linked to how embedded we are in the American economy and vice versa. And again, every time I read things like this, I can't help but go back to the origin, which is Donald Trump being an absolute moron and trying to target. He might as well be targeting his own country. I mean, that's how sort of connected they are. It's such buffoonery. It's very, very difficult to get your head around it because it's a similar story with a lot of things in America as well. It'd be quite difficult for them to completely boycott Canadian goods as well, or Mexican actually, for that matter.
Yeah, and then CTV had this poll, the story that they did, and it says Canadian consumers call for a boycott of American-made food in light of the tariff threat. And then somebody put a poll right underneath their poll, and it doesn't look like Canadians are calling for a boycott. according to like an X poll. And we've seen that lots
Yeah.
whenever sometimes the media push out a poll that they've done, and then all of a sudden there's like the poll actually on X, and that is completely contradictory to what's being, pushed out there.
Well, I mean, I think that guy there, that Ryan, whatever his name is kind of he's very much a partisan, and he's very much on one side. So I
Yeah,
would imagine that his followers would be likely to
yeah.
see that. So that is not a random sample by any means.
Then MP Francois Champagne was on there with Vasi Capellas. I think we shared this yesterday, or I don't think we have the clip right now. But I advise people to go watch it. Vasi Capellas, one of the better journalists on CTV, tried to hold him accountable, and he's pretty good at just slippering around there and saying, it's a different time, that the Liberals are now ready to invest in infrastructure and in pipelines and all that stuff. So there you go. Yeah, I advise people to go watch it. I did post it on my LinkedIn, so you can go find it there. Holly Doan, Blacklocks, again, a good story on our Canadian military. We're thousands short of our minimum strength for fully trained soldiers. We're supposed to, our regular force is 71,500, and then we're at, our effective strength is 52,539. So low, though, actually, that they, in a 2022 recruitment program, they tried to target immigrants, and promise of fast-tracking Canadian citizenship. Out of that, they got 111 people.
That's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, how much money did they spend on that program? I mean, again, we've done stories on this too, and that, like the latest contract that they did for sleeping bags for the North, and that where, like they got better sleeping bags at Canadian Tire.
Yeah. Well, it's not even just the gear, it's also the conditions and salary and benefits and all that. I mean, a place to start would be to look at a lot of the sort of bureaucrats who are on six figures in Ottawa and elsewhere who work for the federal government, and literally just do a direct swap their salaries and their benefits for the soldiers, and then see what happens. That's a start, isn't it? I
Yeah.
would say.
I would say, like, our soldiers are underpaid. I mean, they're asked to put their lives on the line, like the ultimate sacrifice. And yet, I think
Totally.
even the veterans, when they come back, they aren't treated very well. We see that in the U.S. and in Canada, but I think, things are changing in the U.S. But like, our military has been neglected for quite a while. And I think we've done that because we thought we could just like rest underneath the umbrella of the United States.
Yeah. But I mean, I would implore people to have a look at the salaries in the Canadian military, because and then afterwards go and look at how much, like, a regional assistant to the assistant regional manager at the Department of Climate Change or something. See what they earn. They're on like $150,000 a year, some of those people,
Yeah.
who, as far as I'm aware, serve absolutely no purpose whatsoever on this planet, really. I don't understand what they're for. Whereas the most obvious jobs in the world, like fighter pilot and soldier and special forces soldier, they get like not all that much money at all, like considerably less than those people. So that has to be fixed. I mean, that's as clear as day
And
to
how do
me.
you get the best and the brightest unless there's some kind of reward for them to join the military? I mean, you're getting people that probably right now that have no other options, and but we're not getting the best and the brightest.
Totally. But also what's being asked of them is, in some cases, it's completely mad. They're being asked to do like crazy, crazy things, like put their lives at risk. They're being asked to die, basically, and also they're being trained in a really like difficult way. It's like a really brutal life to be trained like that, and then to live in some sort of rural, isolated area where a lot of these army bases are, away from cities, and not really have all that much liberty in their lives because of the need for military discipline. And they're being paid like half of somebody that works in, I don't know, for like the federal or provincial governments, who just like in some cases work from home as well. It's kind of, those aren't the same jobs, and I think it's important, when it's the government that decides the salary. It's not about the market, it's about the government itself that determines the salaries. It's incumbent upon them to recognize that one of those jobs is harder than the other, and therefore the compensation should should be higher for that job.
I'm sure we can all remember when a veteran asked Justin Trudeau for some help at one of his town halls, and he said, "Well, the truth is, we just don't have the money for you right now." I think he's asking for a wheelchair, and I think at the end they offered him MAID. So
yeah, there's been quite a lot of examples of that. Yeah.
So I mean that's how we treat our soldiers. Yet we're willing to send millions and millions and billions of dollars to overseas for different causes, and yet we don't look after our own military. I mean, that in itself is tragic.
It's perverse, isn't it? It's a really strange set of priorities. When you
And
think
maybe,
they should be near the top, really,
well,
like medicine, education, and defense. You think they're like pretty much the holy trinity, aren't they? But then there's defense treated like kind of like an unwanted sibling or something.
yeah.
It's terrible.
And if you look at our size of our military, even at full strength, 78,000, that's pretty small for a nation this size, right? That's our active duty, and they can't even do
It's
that.
tiny.
And they can't even
I
do
mean,
that.
not just size. I mean, in terms of like population, 40 million, but then size in terms of like the land that they're supposed to guard.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? If you divide them between all of those like square miles, there's not much. I wonder how many soldiers per square mile that would work out as.
Yeah, and then again, I would think that a lot of that has to do with why should we prioritize military when we can just rest under the umbrella of Donald Trump or the Americans? And now with Donald Trump there, that may not be easy to do because he's going to say either spend what you need on NATO or not get protected. He's already made that threat to European countries. If you don't pay, you get no protection.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised that he didn't make that when he's been bashing Canada since he was elected. I'm surprised he didn't make that the main the main like thrust of his argument. Because I guess deep down he realizes the obvious, which is that America doesn't defend Canada, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, they defend
Out of like
themselves.
they don't defend Canada out of a sense of like altruism. They're not being kind. They're
Mhm.
doing it because that's the northern entrance to their country.
We're
They're
the
doing it to
buffer.
protect themselves.
We're the
Yeah.
buffer, and NORAD is a big part of that. And yeah.
Yeah, and that's why they want Greenland as well.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on to markets. Again, gold just chopping around there. Still looking for that path, whether that goes to 2,800 or not. But I mean, it's still holding over that 2,700, just chopping in that range. We've seen that for a while there. Looking for a catalyst to go one way or the other. Some people are calling for gold to hit 3,000, which isn't that far of a stretch. And then our Bitcoin. Bitcoin holding that 102,000 or $100,000 mark. And then again, kind of building looks like a head and shoulders there almost, right? Like if you see the two head and shoulders, which would say that thing is looking like it's going to run. You can see the head and shoulders there. The head is on the down part. If you're a technical trader, you can see the two shoulders being formed there. So typically what that means, if you flip it, that's where the next move goes. Again, if you're a technical trader. But again, Bitcoin, happens to have a lot of the wind in its sails. I guess the threat that I would see on Bitcoin is like, this DeepSeek thing that came out of China. These things are being developed with that kind of speed. There's been some people talking about that, these models at some point will be able to crack wallets and then basically just take everybody's money. Like a lot of the Bitcoin people I know have said that's never happened, but, they never say never, right?
Yeah, and there's like, this is like the first episode, really, isn't it? Like there are many more episodes in this crazy TV show to
But I mean, if
watch.
you look at
So
that,
let's wait and see.
if you look at that chart, it does look interesting for Bitcoin again, and a lot of the stuff there definitely is, in Bitcoin's favor with, the new administration in the United States of America. The Canadian dollar, again, chopping in that range, that 69 cent below the 70 cent mark there, trying to form a base, looking for a direction as well. And again, like an election would definitely help the dollar, even if the Liberals win again. You know what I mean? Like they need one voice. You know what I mean? Like right now we have so many voices and no clarity. We definitely need an election to have the one voice, whether that's, like a, conservative, liberal, or NDP government. We need a voice, and then we need because even right now, the premiers are not even speaking with one voice. We have a few stronger voices than a lot of other people that just aren't really saying much at all.
Yeah. And then probably, if not the biggest, then the second biggest influence on that is the Bank of Canada, and they're gonna announce their rate decision tomorrow. So that's gonna potentially bring about some change in this graph.
And then a lot of people are looking for relief. A lot of people that are renewing their mortgages, they're looking for that relief from the Bank of Canada. And, our economy definitely needs investment too. Like, I mean, we need lower rates to get investing. I know Donald Trump has spoken a lot that he wants interest rates lower, and his way to get interest rates lower, he said it, and this is definitely true everywhere you go. Get energy down, and then interest rates will go down. Energy is a big cost component in everything we do. Energy is like one of the, it's in everything we do. Like, it's in this right now. We're streaming this live, and that's using energy. And you're watching it using energy, right? You had your breakfast,
Yeah.
using energy. Energy, energy, energy. And Canada is a beast in energy, except that it's have a lot of chains around it. And the Canadian dollar is reflecting that right now. And that is our stock chart for Canada. If you want to look at Canada's financial health, there it is, right there. That's the stock chart for Canada. OpenAI updates some Canvas features. It now works with OpenAI. Select, you can do different things. Like there's a lot being said in the last couple of days on DeepSeek. I tried it yesterday. I didn't think it was close to ChatGPT. I think the biggest thing that they're talking about is that it took a lot less money to get it to where ChatGPT is kind of like in that same ballpark, and with like a lot less chips. But again, that is coming out of China. And then there's that I can't remember the young man that was interviewed at Davos says he thinks they had 50,000 NVIDIA chips that they're not supposed to have. So who knows what they really have, and who knows what's really going on, and maybe they took some of that code from somewhere else too. The Chinese are really good at replicating things, 100%.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? Like, are they now ahead, or are they now like shoulder to shoulder when it comes to innovation in AI? That's the real question.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's probably fair to assume automatically anyway that they're going to make it cheaper, because they make everything cheaper, because that's kind of their like superpower. That's what the Chinese do better than anyone else, or most of the countries anyway. They produce things to a good standard quickly and cheaply, but it's the innovation that's the really sensitive subject.
I think most politicians and most Canadians and people in the world should take note of, and this is the big point, is that the AI race is real. The Chinese are in that race, and we have no choice but to be in that race as well.
Yeah, and even more sensitive and even more like mysterious is the military side, military tech, because obviously like the Russians are producing hypersonic missiles. I think the Chinese have also done that now. And there are other questions about like satellite destroyers and stuff like that. It's like if the Chinese are capable of matching the Americans in AI, then they certainly can do it in the military realm, can't they? So that's another like another area of concern for the Americans.
And they are launching rockets, just as SpaceX and Jeff Bezos' Origin are. They are launching rockets too, not at the the same level as the Americans are right now, but space, the satellites is the big thing, right? The communication, the global communications. Starlink is one of the largest global communications company in the world, and that's why SpaceX is a military contractor and is like under the careful, watchful eye of the U.S. military as well. Let's move on to EVs. John Rustad of the Conservative opposition leader has come out that he says half the province is struggling to put food on the table, and we're still doing EV rebates to people to buy brand new Teslas, and he says it's just wrong. He wants to scrap the cash rebates, scrap the 2035 goals, and bring back common sense. He's not alone, though. They've done that in the United States. They've scrapped the EV mandate, and likely the credits will follow. And then out of Ontario, the auto industry is calling for the government to scrap the EV mandates, saying there's no viable path forward. I think it'll be really tough to keep the auto manufacturing in Canada, the ones that we do have, like I think we do less than 2% of auto manufacturing in the world, but they will leave just like Stellantis left just recently if there's no mandates across the border, like not that far across the border to manufacture their automobiles versus, manufacturing in Canada with all the tariffs and different things that come on, penalties that come on for the auto manufacturers to manufacture internal combustion engine vehicles.
Yep. And it isn't even just that, is it? I mean, it's like taxes generally, and then it's also cost of energy. And Trump's got rid of the EV mandates. He wants as much energy as possible, as cheaply as possible, and he's also planning to go ahead with a massive tax cutting bonanza. And then I guess the other one is red tape, which he's also said he's gonna clear that away for high value investors. So they kind of win on all four of those topics, don't they? Versus Canada. So we can't. You've got to adapt, unfortunately. A lot of people will see that as being an unfortunate thing, but you have to adapt and you have to match your rivals, otherwise they'll take it off you.
Yeah, and I think what Trump has been saying, and like is people should have a choice. If they want to buy an EV, great, buy one. If you want to buy a gas car, buy one. The government forcing you and telling you what to buy and when to buy is definitely just hurting jobs and hurting people, and also using Canadian tax dollar, American tax dollars to do it. Maxime Bernier, we have heard a lot from him. He's put some information out there. He's gone kind of quiet, right? Or nobody gives him any kind of like time of day, I guess. It's in the next couple of slides there, Rommel. I think Rommel fell asleep back there. He says he's not sleeping. The federal Quebec has given lots of subsidies for next slide there, actually. Quebec, you know that because just across, not too far from your house, right? You just go across the river there, and you can get these huge EV subsidies, right, in Quebec.
Yep, and all kinds of delicious subsidies that the Quebecois get to feast on in all realms of life. But yeah, they also have the most generous EV subsidy.
Yeah, no, it's better than anywhere I was in Canada. Yeah, so if you like I always question you, why didn't you buy your house across the river there? It's not that far. You get a lot
Well,
better
there's a
deal there.
long list of reasons if you want to go into it, but they tax you more for one, and then they also they're a bit wacky when it comes to the language enforcement of the language. So I think a lot of people are a little bit scared of that.
Yeah, so the last thing we got to say today is we got a meme there for you, and I'll let you explain it because you put it in there.
Well, we talk about DeepSeek. I mean, one of the first things, they couldn't resist a lot of the Western journalists. One of the first things they did was try and test
To see what it said about
it on
Tiananmen
like
Square.
and just like in general, like the Communist Party in general, and anything political really, because obviously China is a sort of like censorship is comprehensive in China, let's say, and they have a completely different perspective on the Tiananmen Square protests and subsequent massacre. And so straight away, somebody went in there and did that. And there's other ones like talking about like Taiwan and stuff like that, and just any sort of subject where the Chinese Communist Party has a line that differs from the rest of the world. They went in there, and sure enough, DeepSeek, DeepSeek. Well, it's funny because that man looking depressed there, who's actually Japanese, that man, not Chinese. But the reason that he's looking so depressed there is because it almost seems when you're on the app, it almost seems like it struggles with it. It's like, this again, because it starts to type something and then it like stops and it says like, I'm here to help you with. It's quite funny.
No different than Google's Gemini when it first launched, when it was trying to rewrite history. You remember that?
Yep. Indeed, George. What was it like? The most hilarious one was show me an image of the American founding fathers, and it was like loads of black women and sort of like East Asian men and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was trying to rewrite
hilarious.
history. Definitely, Gemini was a huge flop. I haven't really gone back to Gemini to even try it. The ones that I'm kind of playing with, that I use on a regular basis, ChatGPT, and I think you do as well. And I use Grok quite a bit. And then I've tried DeepSeek, but I found that it didn't really do anything of any value for me. I mean, it couldn't even look at an image, whereas Grok and both ChatGPT can analyze images. And then I think the big thing coming out of ChatGPT is Operator, which is launched for professional, or it's only available in the United States right now, and Operator's text to action, and that's the real big moment for sure, is Operator.
Yeah. I do hear a lot about Claude. I've never tried that one though, but I have heard that that's like supposed to be almost like neck and neck with ChatGPT, or even better, actually, I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, they all have like a specialty and a perplexity too. They all have kind of a specialty I use, now and then. But the one that I find that I use a lot is definitely ChatGPT and Grok. But we are, just a little plug, we are holding, if you're in the Kelowna area, the central Okanagan, we are holding an AI mini-series summit to lead up to our big event that you were at. We were at the September 2024 event where we had Peter Diamandis. But we are holding a small mini event where we're going to actually replay Peter Diamandis this Thursday at the Laurel Packing House. So you can get a ticket online and you can attend that event this Thursday. It'll be a half-day event with Peter Diamandis, a keynote, and also a panel with some local business leaders on AI. AI has become so important in our daily lives, and we're seeing it in the stock market as well, right? A lot of the value of the companies, like NVIDIA was the highest market cap a couple days ago. It fell off a bit, but it is recovering today. I think before we leave here, I think, I don't know where it is. It was up this morning. So who knows where all this stuff goes. We do thank you for watching Kelowna Now, though. Again, like and subscribe, do all those things, and follow us here on X, TikTok, YouTube, and then hopefully one day, if we get a new government, we get our Facebook and Instagram back. Now, there's a hope, right? You're not as hopeful as I am, but hey, there you go.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I've interviewed God knows how many people, and even the most favorable sort of say, well, yeah, we don't like it, but we're not sure when we could practically get around to dealing with it. So, I mean, I think at this point, I'm just kind of like, I'm like a beaten animal or something that's just used to being slapped around the head rather than taken for a walk. So let's wait and see. I don't know, I'm just naturally pessimistic about it.
You are a pessimist, so that much is true. And yeah, NVIDIA up $8 already this morning, up 7% after being off. So there you go. So there's some recovery in NVIDIA. With that said, we do thank you for watching Kelowna Now, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. And then you can see the traffic flowing back there. And
we don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News